Welcome to argument video. We're going to talk about implication as an argument. So a compound statement that includes implication is called an argument. It is an implication if it has if-then. Okay. P is the antecedent and Q is the consequent. And the symbol is, it's like an arrow, okay, going to the right. Okay, so in implication, it's simply a cause and effect proposition. For example, your proposition P is you steal, and Q proposition, or the second proposition, you go to prison. Okay. Being an implication, you will have therefore, the words if and then are added. If you steal, then you go to prison. Okay. Remember that it's important to use the truth table. So here's an example. This is the truth table for implication. If your first statement or your proposition is true, okay, and then the second proposition is true, okay, your if-then, your implication is true. Okay, if the first proposition is true and the second one is false, then your implication, the implication will be false. If the first proposition is false and the second proposition is true, then the implication is true. Now, if both are false, then the implication is also true. Okay. Now, take note that the only time that it's going to be false is when your first proposition is true followed by a false proposition. Okay, so let's keep going. Okay, let's analyze an argument. Okay, the argument will be if P, then not P, or the negation of P, and the negation of P. If the negation of P, then it's P. Okay, so there's only one proposition. What happens is that you negate the first proposition. Okay, so let's have the negation. So as you can see, here, okay, when your proposition is true, when you negate it, it becomes false. And then when your first proposition is false, then when you negate it, it becomes true. Okay, now if we add the if-then, so P, if P, then the negation of P. Remember the truth table for implication. Okay, when the first one is true and then followed by F, okay, I'm going to write all the, then you will have false. And this is the only time actually that it's going to be false, because if the first one is false followed by a true, then it's true. Okay, now let's do the opposite. What happens if the negation of P comes first followed by if negation of P is your antecedent and then the consequent is the P. Okay, so by then we go false followed by true. Okay, then it's true. Okay, this time this is similar to the first one. True. If it's true, then false. So then the implication is false. Okay, now this time look at the symbol. This is the same as this proposition or compound statement, and this compound statement is the same as the last compound statement over here. Now you're going to analyze this argument using and, as you see here in the middle. So it's like F and T. What is the result? It's going to be false. And then true and false, I'm saying and because this is and, true and false is also false. Okay, so analyzing the argument, we can now say that if P, then the negation of P, and if the negation of P, then P is a contradiction, because you have here false on both occasions at the last column, and then it's also an invalid argument. Okay, let's check the different types of argument before we move on. Okay, the first one, we already talked about this, contradiction. When you're looking at the truth table, the last column should contain all false. Okay. The second one is tautology. The last column of your truth table should contain all true statements or argument. And then it's a valid argument when the last column of your truth table are all true. And then it's invalid when at the last column of your truth table has at least one false. Okay, sorry, this one I have a mistake, but it means the truth table should contain at least one false. So one or more false, it makes the argument invalid. Okay, let's analyze another argument. If the communists win the election, I will leave the country. I am not leaving the country, therefore the communist will not win. This one is will not win the election. Okay. So our first proposition is the communist win the election, and you can see it up there. Okay. And then the second proposition will be I will leave the country. Okay. So now let's combine and have compound statements. Okay, if the communists win the election, I will leave the country. This is an implication. So we have if P, then Q. Okay, I am not leaving the country. I am not leaving the country is just the opposite of Q, or the second proposition. So it's the negation of Q. Okay, that's the symbol. So as you can see, it's important that you know the symbols. Okay. The last one is the communists will not win the election. Now you see this proposition or statement, it's the opposite of the first one, which is the P proposition. So we're just going to negate P, so you will have the negation of P. So let's write out the entire math notation or symbol. So the argument becomes, okay, following what's written up there, okay, you know that your first line is in an implication. So you have if the communists win the election, I will leave the country. Both propositions are positive, so you don't have negation. And then on the second line, I am not leaving the country. So and I am not leaving the country is Q, so negation of Q. Therefore, your therefore then is the symbol arrow. The communist will not win the election. So you have the negation of P. Okay. I hope you understand. It's simply like proposition by proposition. And you follow it and you write the notation. Okay. The next one, we will have the truth table. So if you're writing down notes, copy all this so you can take a look at the sentences or the statements as we go over the truth table. Okay. So we'll have the truth table here because we are still analyzing the argument. Okay, so we have the PQ that we have here, the values, and then I will write all the notations that we need, okay, on top until you have all the entire notation. Now, if you take a look at the notations on top, I just chunk it like one by one, so it's easy to make the decision of what we're going to have on the last column. Okay, so I write the last one on top. Okay, so if P, then Q, we have true and true. we will have true. This is, we're following the truth table for implication. Okay, there's only one situation wherein for implication we get false. This is on true. The first one is true followed by a false. So on this second one, true and false, you will get F. Okay, so the last two we will have true and then true. Okay, now on the fourth column, this is the negation of Q. So we're just going to have the opposite value of Q. So on the first Q, proposition Q, it's true. So it's going to be false. Okay. And then the second one is false. So it's the opposite, true. And then the third one is true. So it's false. And then false, the opposite, it's true. Okay. Now this time, take a look at the symbol. If P then Q, you already have the value for that. You already have that on the third column. And then the negation of Q is at the fourth column. On this column, we are comparing and using the green ones. So this is color-coded so that you can easily follow. Okay? So for the first one is true and false. If it's true and false, it's going to be false. If it's the second one, false and true, it's going to be false. Okay. Now, true and false, it's the same as the first one. So we know it's going to be false. Okay. And then this one is true and true. Okay. So this is true. So if we're looking at this column, okay, if we're trying to find out the type of argument, we have 3 false statements and then 1 true. Okay, so if you still remember, then this one, if we look at this and analyze this argument, this is an invalid argument. Okay, now for this column, the 6th one, it's just the negation of P. So we look at the first, here's the first column, and we just negate them. We start with true. The negation of true is false. Okay, it's also written in pink, so it's color-coded. True, negate true, and it's false. Negate false, and you have true. Negate false, and you have true. Okay, now to the last one. Okay, we are doing if-then because this is the one that we are trying to figure out. Okay, so we are now, this symbol is this result. Okay, and then the negation of P is this result. So we're using the pink ones. So for if-then or implication, false and false is true. Okay, false and false here in the first one, and false and false here in the second one, so we know the second one is also true. Okay, now on the third one, it's false and true. For if-then or implication truth table, false true is also true. Okay, and then true true for if-then, of course, is true. Okay, because for if-then situation, the only false situation is when the first proposition is true and the second one is false. Okay, so now let's analyze the argument then. This is what we want to analyze. The last column gives you all true values. Okay, so this describing this, when it's all true, it's a tautology, and we can also say that the argument is valid. Okay, I hope this is clear. Okay, for practice, solve number 1 and number 4 on page 406. Okay. Bye.